Good morning. It's 7:02 a.m. on Monday, March 28th, 2016. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up back in my own home. This is 5 more minutes. Oh, boy. I woke up pretty easily this morning and sort of felt like, oh, good. I'm not going to be super tired today, but seems like super tired. Travel days. So, obviously, first morning back after my vacation, it was such a great trip. And, we had just a lot of fun. It was so good. And I'm really glad that I went. I do hope to go again next year. In the meantime, I've not yet been able to pick up Luna. I got home too late last night. Figure instead of picking her up before work, just to reunite and then immediately leave her again, I'm going to pick her up after work. And so now, giant mug of tea. I left my place very messy, which is one of those things, it's like when you're heading out to a vacation, you just sort of like, oh, I'll deal with it later. But then you get home and you're like, oh man, past me is a bitch. Lazy slob doesn't clean up her own place. Anyway, so I think I have a lot on the agenda. I'm gonna have to be proactive in establishing my new routine because I definitely want to try to carry some of the creative inspiration from from the retreat forward into my routine life. But some things like, hey, maybe I should pick up all that garbage on my counter. Those things can sometimes take precedence. Not to mention that, having just gotten back to work after a week off, I'll have some catch up stuff to do. But you know what? It's all okay. One thing that I was following a bit. Did I talk about this already? I was going to talk more about Batman versus Superman, but I know, like, I'm vaguely remembering now that in one of my videos, was it even just yesterday? I mentioned that I talked about that, and now I don't remember what I said. I don't think that I got to the point that I was really thinking about for this morning, though, which is whether or not you like something. And obviously it would be just irrational to try to make it sound like you can like everything. Some things are just not for you. Some things are poorly made. But regardless of whether or not you like something, I feel like there's a tendency in certain corners of the internet to have snark become your entire worldview. And like the rise of these videos where it's like, oh, everything wrong with such and such a movie, or everybody sort of racing to the bottom to write the most outrageous negative review of Batman versus Superman, saying it's worse than cancer, or that just the idea of trying to do a funny takedown of this movie or something. Like, those sorts of things can be funny. I've enjoyed them in the past, and I don't want to imply that somehow anyone's a bad person for liking those things. But I am a little bit worried about the phenomena in general of making hating things into like a sport. Like, who can write the best bad review of a movie? And that just encourages hyperbole, and it no longer becomes any kind of a reasoned deconstruction of the movie, or like a real, like, For example, in a lot of those sort of everything wrong with videos, the handful that I've watched, lots of times stuff that they point out, I feel like that's that's not wrong. You know, it's like they'll point out something that's a tiny bit confusing and say, "Look at this big plot hole," and I'm like, "That's not a plot hole. It's explained later, and you just don't include that part." And so I feel like in this race to be the one who can say something is terrible in the funniest way, I feel like that's not a good way to live, you know? I think it's better to try to focus your energies on the things that are good. That doesn't mean that everything is good, of course not. But I don't especially care for what seems like an increasing culture of enjoyment of disliking things. It's kind of snobbery. Anyway, I don't know about Batman versus Superman. I haven't seen it. I'm not sure I'm going to at this point, or at least not in the theater. We'll see. I know some people like it. And not to mention, there's part of me that just kind of wants to knee jerk against all of these. See, because I'm not even talking about like professional movie critics. I'm talking about like bloggers that just sort of say, "Oh yeah, man, I'm gonna get a ton of clicks by just writing this extreme, just then I'm spewing rant about how bad this movie is." I don't like it. But I hope that this video does not just simply constitute even a step in the direction of what I'm talking about. I think what it just comes down to is the old thing about, it's okay to not like things. It's okay, but don't be a dick about it. All right, I will talk to you guys tomorrow for 5 more minutes.